All right, now that we know how to change our options manually, we're going to learn how to make it dynamically change. So in script.js, we want to create a couple variables that will allow us to change the content on our screen. So we've talked about variables before, but as a refresher, a variable is a keyword that will hold some data value under that specific name. We're going to start off by creating a variable called font name, and this font is going to hold the information that says audio wide on our screen. So in order to select this specific part of my HTML, I'm going to say document.querySelector, and inside the parentheses, I'm going to write span.fontName. Now, why is it span.fontName? Let's take a look at our style.css. That is how we select it in our CSS, and when we do the query selection, we're simply writing it in the same way we would select it in our CSS file. So I'm going to copy and paste the text in here, and I'm going to make sure to put this inside quotes since we have just a regular string of text. Now that we created our variable, let's go ahead and test it out. So I'm going to call our variable of font name. I'm going to add something called an event listener. So we're going to be listening for some kind of event. In this case, it will be a mouse click. And then once this click happens, we are going to run a function. So a function is written with the keyword function, followed by parentheses, and then curly parentheses. I'm going to open this up so that we can put some code inside our function. Now let's say that when we click on our specific span, our font name.innerHTML is going to change to say clicked. And let's see that in action. If we click audio wide, there we go. We now see it saying clicked. Now that we know that font name has been declared properly, let's go ahead and do the same thing for our options and our text area. So I'm going to create a variable for my options. So I'm going to say var options and say document.querySelector. And now for the options, there's a special way to select a select tag. So if we take a look at index.html, we'll notice that our select tag has the name of typeface. So we are going to select it using the keyword select, followed by square brackets, and inside the square brackets, we are going to say, look for the select that has a name equal to typeface. And let's also remember to wrap this all around our quotes. So you'll notice if I put double quotes everywhere, it's going to think that my typeface isn't included in the string. So in order to correct this, I'm going to change the double quote surrounding the typeface with single quotes. And once we do that, you'll notice that everything has turned red and it is now considered one big string. All right, the hard part is over. Our final variable will be our text area. So I'm going to declare var text area and set it equal to document.querySelector. And this time, since this is just a text area element, we're just going to write text area inside quotes. We're going to go ahead and erase this test code that we wrote earlier. Now let's go ahead and think about the flow. So when we click on one of the options and change the value, we want to see an update here in the text area along with the name of the font. So let's go ahead and start by selecting our options variable, and we're going to add another event listener. This time, instead of a click, we're going to listen for a change. So when a user changes the value that is selected, something will happen. So again, let's go ahead and put a comma. And after the comma, we're going to declare a function. So function, parentheses, curly braces, and open it up. Inside our function, we're going to write the changes that will happen. So first, let's say text area dot style, and we're going to change the font family. and make sure to capitalize that second F. And we're going to set this equal to this dot value. So now what does that mean? Well, the this refers to whatever option we selected. And in our HTML, we declared a specific value for our selected font. Now we want to do the exact same thing to our font name variable. So font name.style.fontFamily, set it equal to this dot value. And finally, if we run it, we can see that when we change our font back to Playball, it will now update the fonts to show Playball. So even though we changed the font style to show as Playball, it still says audio wide here. So now we want to update this text to represent the actual font name whenever we change it. So let's go ahead and select the variable font name one more time. And this time we're going to change the inner HTML of it. And we've done this before. So we're going to set this also equal to this dot value, since this value will still have the name of our font. And if we hit run, we can now successfully see that everything is updating real time. And the final step for us is now to add all the options that we want. So let's head back over to our index.html file. So instead of our sample text, I'm going to replace this with the actual fonts that we imported. So in my case, I'm going to create one for Eastsea and one for Merriweather. So I'm just going back and forth between my CSS to make sure I can spell it correctly. So I'll replace this one with Merriweather. And I'm just going to copy this entire line of code and create another copy right below. And I'm going to call this one Eastsea. So now we have to update our values in order for our JavaScript to know what font style to update it to. Now it's really important to double check the spelling against the Google Fonts page. So I'm going to make sure that I spelled Merriweather and the full Eastsea Dokdo correctly. And I'm just going to replace the part in yellow for our value. All right, so now if we hit run, we will see that we have audio wide, Playball, Merriweather, and Eastsea. Now, your fonts may be different depending on which ones you imported, but if you follow along with the same steps and just make sure your fonts are spelled correctly, it should work with your custom font choices. So we have successfully created our type checker app. You can play around with the neon glow in the CSS file. You could also continue to add more fonts by adding more options in the index.html file. Or if you would like a challenge, I will have a challenge video that you can watch where we will learn how to change the color of our fonts along with the size of our fonts.